Yes. So yeah, we'll start in Daniel chapter 3, probably at the beginning of the chapter.
Okay.
We've been looking at the different characters in the Bible, different individuals. A lot of time with Abraham, just because a lot of stuff happened in Abraham's life. Lot, Hagar, Ishmael, different ones. We got up to Isaac and the Abraham making that sacrifice of Isaac, knowing that God would raise him from the dead, and we spent a couple of weeks on that. And I want to keep looking at different characters of the Bible and how their interactions with God affect us, but I've kind of been going in order in Genesis, but now I'm going to jump around a little bit just because there's different ones that are speaking to me. And before I get to this section in Daniel, I was going to read a quote and think about, as I read this to you, it's from the Bible. See if you can think of who it would be. Give you some options. How about, could be David, like with the Psalms. Could be Moses. Could be a pagan king. Could be John the Baptist. So think of those. So here's the quote. It is my pleasure to tell you about the miraculous signs and wonders that the Most High God has performed for me. How great are his signs, how mighty his wonders. His kingdom is an eternal kingdom. His dominion endures from generation to generation. Does that sound like anybody you can think of from the Bible? Any guesses? So, David, like with the Psalms, Moses, pagan king, or John the Baptist?
Pagan king.
Pagan king, because we're in Daniel?
It wouldn't be John the Baptist.
No, it wouldn't be John the Baptist, would it? His was repent, the kingdom of heaven's at hand. Yeah.
What were the first two again?
David, like from the Psalms, or Moses.
No. I think it was the king.
I think it was David. Because everybody else said something else.
David was a very godly man.
Sounds like David. Yeah, it was Nebuchadnezzar.
The king. So you didn't give us that.
Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. Yeah, he's in pagan king.
That makes it easier.
Yeah. If I said Nebuchadnezzar, it would have been way too obvious because I was already got you in Daniel.
Yeah, I did that. I was just reading that.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's actually in chapter 4 where he says this, but he says, I want to tell you about the miraculous signs, wonders, the Most High God, how he performed them for me, how great his signs, how mighty his wonders, his kingdom and his eternal kingdom, his dominion endures from generation to generation. And you hear something like that at first and you wouldn't think a pagan king, okay, this is the guy that builds a statue, big gold statue, says everybody bow down. This is the guy that when his leaders are wanting to get rid of Daniel, they pass a law saying you can only pray to the king and nobody else. This is a guy that thought pretty highly of himself.
It's pretty long though, but I've got it in here. It's under Daniel 3:1, but it's a, I always got these little notes.
Mm-hmm.
It says, under the pretense of religion and holiness, in making an image to his idol Bel, he sought his own ambition and vain glory. And this declares that he was not touched with the true fear of God before, but that he confessed him on a sudden motion as the wicked when they are overcome with the greatness of his works. The Greek interpreters write that this was done 18 years after the dream, and as may appear, the king feared lest the Jews by their religion should have altered the state of his commonwealth. Therefore, he meant to bring all to one type of religion, and so rather sought his own peace than God's glory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there was a time period, and there's transformations in Nebuchadnezzar's life. He begins, he's capturing Israel, and he brings captivities in. And of course, this is where Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego say they're not going to eat food that's going to defile them. And, he has to make a deal and that whole process, they get the Daniel diet now today, if you do a Daniel fast. There you go, okay, from that. And then he's trained, Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are trained for I think it was over a year. All the different ways of the magicians, the Magi, the dream interpreters, and there was sometimes you read about people like that and we have this fanciful view about it, but they actually knew a lot of stuff. They knew like astronomy and different things like that. You look at even some of the construction they did years and years and years and years and years ago, and you go, wow, how did they figure this stuff out? They'll have, things that align perfectly with the stars and things like that. They were not ignorant people. They didn't have the technology we have today, as far as we know. But they had a lot of knowledge. They had a lot of understanding. They had a lot of ability. Think of Moses when he confronts Pharaoh, and the magicians are actually able to throw down staffs and have them turn into serpents. That's some pretty powerful stuff there, and they were able to do some of the other things that Moses did too. I mean, they had power and understanding. You read about things like the Book of the Dead or different things. They had a lot of knowledge. And so Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are all trained in these things, and they go to the king, and the king sees how wise they are, and he kind of puts them in a high position, as Daniel as the main Magi, the main teacher, the main counselor type guy that's able to do those things, and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are right there. And so he sees their ability, their talent. There's something special about them. And you have to remember that Nebuchadnezzar, this pagan society that they're in, they believed in gods, plural. They believed in a lot of different gods. And so Nebuchadnezzar had an understanding, and you see this kind of develop in Daniel's life, where he knows that gods are real, or he believes gods are real. He believes he has a God that he worships. Now, he's so powerful, and that's the danger, isn't it, for the kings and stuff. They get so powerful, they start to see themselves as a god, right? They start to see themselves as someone that can be worshipped. And he has some issues in that area, but he really doesn't get to that point of exalting himself above God. And that's something I want us to see in his life. Or to a point where he rejects who he ends up understanding as the holy God, as this God that's different than the other gods that Daniel worships. And he comes to respect Daniel's God. So in Daniel chapter 3, Nebuchadnezzar makes this, 90 feet high and 9 feet wide gold statue. And how they made it and what exactly it was done with it is hard to know. They think, if it was solid gold, it would be too heavy, too big to make, that it was probably something that was overladen with gold or whatever. It doesn't really matter. It was made. It was there. It was huge. It was amazing. It was spectacular. You look at some of the artwork and things today. You go to these countries that have stuff that's thousands of years old and stuff, and it's like the construction's just amazing, and just you're like, wow, this is incredible. It was pretty incredible. It was pretty amazing. And he tells the people, that they have to, when it's dedicated, that they're going to have to come and worship him, worship that statue. So in verse 4 of chapter 3, then the herald loudly proclaimed, "This is what you are commanded to do, O peoples, nations, and men of every language. As soon as you hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipes, and all kinds of music." They had a good band going. This is when the rock starts, when they start cutting a groove. I don't know what it's called. You must fall down and worship the image of gold that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. Whoever does not fall down and worship will immediately be thrown into a blazing furnace. And as we go along, we see that they actually had the furnace there ready to go. I guess that means he thought there may be some people that wouldn't, or maybe just the threat of it would be enough to let them know this is not an empty threat. Actually, how many of you know that in this time period and this kind of setting that they really didn't bluff on stuff like that? If they said they're going to kill you, they kill you. Yeah, I mean they didn't really play games. They didn't wait. They didn't deliberate for hours. Oh, we got to get rid of them. Oh, let's have a trial. Let's have another trial. Let's get the lawyers. This is pretty much okay. You're guilty. Dead. It just. And so he's like, you're going to have to fall down and worship. Worship the image. So it's even he's not quite to that point where he's saying worship me, but he's saying worship the image. So he's showing his great works, and this is kind of where he's at. He's showing how great his works are. Worship them. Worship what I've done. And that's kind of how that progression works. It goes by steps, you know. You know, look at who I am, look at what I did, look at, you know, eventually it's like, okay, worship me, because I'm the one that did it all. You know, but right then it's look at the works, worship the work, look at how great this is, worship that image, fall down, look at that. And if you keep down that path, eventually it would be where he'd make himself to be a king or a god, you know, and you worship him. You know, we see that in Egypt, right? It gets to the point where the pharaohs are considered gods, and it happens in a lot of the pagan societies. We should never consider ourselves more highly than we ought. You know, if he's still in the mirror shaving and he cuts himself and bleeds like everybody else, maybe he should not think he's a god. Kim Jong-un in North Korea may want to reconsider his position on how great he is. Yeah, may not be as great as you think, buddy. So they get everything going. Verse 7. Therefore, as soon as they heard the sound of the horn, the flute, the zither, everyone fell down and worshipped the image of gold that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. But at this time, some of the astrologers came forward and denounced the Jews. They said, King Nebuchadnezzar, O king, live forever. You have issued a decree, O king, that everyone, they got to bow down at the golden image. But verse 12, but there are some Jews who you set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who pay no attention to you, O king. They neither serve your gods nor worship the image of gold you have set up. So, were these people lying about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Nope. They didn't worship his gods, and they didn't bow down to the image. Why are they mentioning it? Are they worried about the king? They don't want the king to be disrespected. You know, they never talked about the king behind his back, right? They never said how much smarter they were than the king, and he wouldn't have accomplished this if it wasn't for us, and I was the one that, they'd never do anything like that. They're only out for the king. They're out for themselves. And notice how they point out, hey, these are the guys that you appointed to be these leaders here, and they're above us, and, they're all hung up on this God of theirs, and so, hey, we found a way to get them in trouble. King, live forever. We honor you, King. That's the only reason we're here. No, they're only there to get somebody else in trouble. Isn't it amazing how there are individuals in political circles and things like that will say they're wanting to respect the law or constitutions or what's right and things like that, and yet serving themselves and doing their own thing. Goes all the way back to the beginning. Nothing new under the sun. Same thing. They didn't care about the king. They didn't care about the worshiping of the image. They didn't care about any of that stuff. All they cared about is these guys are being more respected than we are. And why were they being more respected? Why were they having this position of authority and advancement? Because they were better at it. They're better than me, so instead of me getting better so I can keep up with them or pass them by getting better than them, I'll just tear them down. I'll just destroy them. Someone's doing a better job than you. Maybe your answer shouldn't be destroying them. Maybe you should figure out how to work with them and do a better job. I wonder if that applies to any political things. I don't know. So there's Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These guys are going to go get them in trouble. So they weren't, in this big crowd or someplace where the king could see. They weren't pulling a Colin Kaepernick, right? Everybody's got their hand and they're going to take a knee or whatever and stand out in the crowd. They weren't doing something to stand out in the crowd or make a statement or anything like that. They were somewhere else where these guys are like, ha-ha, now we got a way to get even with them. And so they report it to the king. And in verse 13, furious with rage, Nebuchadnezzar summoned Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And so wherever they are now, he's like, okay, bring them over here. And he goes, is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the image of gold I have set up? And what's interesting here is he actually asked them about their worship of the gods, because when he questioned them, when he interviewed them, and he found out how wise they were, when he found out how discerning they were, when he put them in these positions of leadership, he never really questioned whether they worshiped his gods or not. And it really wasn't an issue, right? Because he believed in a lot of gods. Now, of course, he's going to say his gods are the best. My gods are bigger than your gods. My God can beat up your gods. You should, he's going to say his are the best. You should, but it never really was an issue. He was like, hey, these guys are wise. They know what they're talking about. They can discern things. I can trust them. They're making good decisions. Put them in leadership. Now, because these people brought this up, he's like, well, wait, now you're not worshiping my gods? If it didn't affect their ability to do what they were doing, what difference did it make? I don't understand why. There's people that care more about what denomination you are or what group you're with or, what your belief system is than whether you're functioning in there's people that can lose jobs because they don't have that politically correct idea. They're not part of the right group, or they're this, or they have some certain beliefs and they can get kicked out, punished. What difference does it make? If they're doing what they're supposed to do, what difference does it make? It's amazing how much discrimination there can be in our country for individuals just because of belief systems or things like that, and not looking at talent, ability, functioning in the place they're supposed to be able to function. And the opposite's true too. There'll be individuals that get exalted because they have the right belief system, even though they're not better at the job. Sad state of affairs. So he's asking him, is it true you're not worshiping my gods, and you're not bowing down to the image I set up? Verse 15. Now, when you hear the sound of all these wonderful musical instruments, when the band starts to play, but you do not worship it, you will be thrown immediately into the blazing furnace. Then what God will be able to rescue you from my hand? And this is where Nebuchadnezzar gets a wake-up call. He believes in gods, and he's okay with the fact that they have gods or a god that they worship, whatever. It don't matter, That's where I don't understand, like, atheists and individuals like that don't take that kind of position. It's like they don't believe God. What difference does it make if somebody else does? Why they got to be anti-God? And I've met atheists before that was just like, well, I don't believe in God, but I'm not like anti-God. I mean, if that's what you believe, that's what you believe. Why wouldn't you? It's just like, why would you be against something that you don't believe in? And that's kind of his position. He's like, whatever, you got a God, but, you worship mine too. I got a good God. What's wrong with my God? Why don't you like him? And he's like, so what God's going to save you? And again, his works, his power, his ability to command them to be thrown into the furnace is more powerful than their God. That's what he's saying. I'm going to throw you into a furnace. If you don't do this, you don't have a God powerful enough to stop that. I'm the king. I got the furnace. Well, we'll see. I know we all know the story. So. Verse 19, verse 16. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to save us from it, and he will rescue us from your hand, O king. But even if he does not, we want you to know, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up. And I love this answer because, first of all, they say, we don't have to defend ourselves. We don't have to tell you why we don't worship your God. We don't have to tell you why we're not bowing down. We have a God we serve. We're going to keep serving him. Not going to serve yours. And service to him, we're not going to bow down to some golden image. Throw us into the furnace. He'll either save us or he won't. He can. But it's not up to you whether we die in a furnace or not. It's up to our God, because we're serving him. Now, if we stopped serving him, bowed down to your image, then we would be at your mercy. But we're not. We're serving a God that's above your gods, a God that's above you, a God that has an ability to rescue us. And even if he doesn't, doesn't make a difference to us. We're going to serve him. Be with him for eternity. Praise God. He'll rescue us, or he won't. Whatever. I just love that. That they just know. And of course, they end with the idea that we're not going to serve your gods. We're not going to worship your image. Threaten all you want. Do whatever you have to do. Ain't going to happen. I mean, it's like, really not much more to be said. It's all been said. So then verse 19, then Nebuchadnezzar was furious with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. His attitude toward them changed. He ordered the furnace heated 7 times hotter than usual. Now, remember back in verse 13, he said he was furious and he had rage when he summoned them. So with rage and ferocity, he's confronting them. Now they give him this answer, and it says that his attitude was changed toward them, and he's basically even angrier than he was before. Where do you go from rage, furious rage, to what? I mean, it's like, the dude lost it, right? I mean, he just blew his top, right? Steam's coming out. No wonder they got a fiery furnace. He's like, heat this thing up 7 times hotter than it normally gets. And if you have the old potbelly stoves and stuff, you ever heat it up a little hotter than it should have got? I used to love doing that. Go down in the basement and just keep feeding some food in there and get a little air there. And the back of it would get all red hot, almost white hot, which would weaken the metal. Wasn't a good idea. Hotter than it should get. Come on, John, you ever do that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of fun, wasn't it? Some of these young folk don't know what I'm talking about.
We laid down beside them and did our schoolwork with a lamp.
Yeah. Praise God. So he's like, okay, get it. So they're heating up hotter, got the blowers, well, however they're doing it. And they get it so hot, 7 times hotter. And this is a big furnace that'll fit people. I mean, ever see the furnaces that are really big and they can like melt metal and stuff in them and things like that? I mean, that's kind of that picture. And so he, verse 20, he commands some of the strongest soldiers in his army to tie him up and to throw him into the blazing furnace. And so here Nebuchadnezzar is going to show his power, show his ability, let people know why his gods are better than your gods. And he ties them up, gets his strongest men to throw him in there. And we know some of those guys die doing that. I don't want to sign up for that one. If there's some people that are serving God and someone not serving God and they're telling you go against those people of God and help me along with this, don't do it. You may get burned up. Time to say, no, I'm with them. Jump in head first. You might as well. You're going to die anyway. So anyway, he throws them in there. And we know the story, right? He looks and there's 4 people walking in there. They're like, wait, I thought I only put 3 in there. And they're walking around free. Their bonds are gone. They're walking with Jesus in the fire. And he calls them out and they come out and they don't even smell a smoke or anything. And it's like... From a king thinking he has all this authority and power, telling people to worship his works, now all of a sudden someone's going to do a work in front of him and get his attention. So in verse 24 it says, then King Nebuchadnezzar leapt to his feet in amazement and asked his advisors, weren't there 3 men that we tied up and threw into the fire? And he's looking at them walking around and he's like, whoa, jumps up in amazement. Not furiously angry anymore, but what the world is going on here? What in all my God's names is happening? And he asks his advisors, hey guys, didn't we throw 3? Yeah, but some other guys got burned up on the way. Maybe one of them fell in with them or something. I don't know. They're like, no, yep, certainly, king. And then he says in verse 25, look, I see 4 men walking around in the fire, unbound and unharmed, and the 4th looks like the son of gods. Okay, Nebuchadnezzar believes in gods. His gods are better than other gods. These guys won't worship his God. They won't bow down to his image, his works. Now he binds them, throws them up into the fire. He has the ability to bind them. He has the ability to put them to death in the fire. They're walking free in the fire. They're not bound anymore. And the 4th person that's with them looks like a son of God. Son of gods. Someone that was from the gods. A direct connection to the gods. You know, not God himself, because they don't come down and interact with us and that, but really close. An angel of God, a child of God, really almost God, something. Anyway, he's there. And so Nebuchadnezzar is just, he's shocked. He's amazed. He's standing. He's, whoa. And so he goes, he approaches the opening, not too close, right? He doesn't want to die. And he says, and this is verse 26, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out and come here. You notice a change in his attitude there on how he addresses them? Servants of the Most High God. Where did he get that from? Remember, before it was like he didn't seem to know or care that they had other gods they were worshiping. He just was worried about, why aren't they worshiping my God? Now that was brought to his attention. And they didn't worship his image. But he didn't talk anything about their God. But he knew about them. They must have had some conversations, right? Because when he acknowledges him for the first time in Scripture that we know of, that he acknowledges him, he says, you guys are servant of the Most High God. Why is he most high? Because your God's bigger than my God. My God let me do all these works. My God let me capture all these groups and all these countries and all these people. My God let me build this huge image. My God let me have everybody fall down and worship the image. My God allowed me to tie you up. My God allowed me to throw you into a fire. But your God saved you and set you free, protected you from the fire. You don't even smell the smoke. Your God's bigger than my God. He's the Most High God. I've never met a God bigger than yours, or I would have been serving him. That should be the response, right? Of course, people are loyal. Got your favorite gods. Don't want to let them go, Been with me since I was little. So he calls them out, and he tells them to come out, and they come out. Verse 27, and the straps, the separates, prefects, governors, royal advisors, crowded around them. They saw that the fire had not harmed their bodies, nor was a hair of their head singed. Their robes were not scorched, and there was no smell of fire on them. It's amazing enough they didn't get burned. There's no hairs burned. Nothing. They don't even smell of smoke. You know the protection that God has on you, that you don't even smell of smoke? Now, I know of one individual that was in a burning building and didn't get burned, that God protected him, and he didn't even know the Lord at the time. A bunch of you guys know him, too.
Tail.
Yeah. Yeah, he was running from some people that wanted to kill him, and he went into the building, and then they didn't follow him, and then he realized that, the building's on fire. He thought, that's strange. And then later, when he got saved and was reading the Bible, he's like, oh, that's what happened to me. Yeah, it didn't even smell, nothing. No smoke, nothing. That's protection. That's the very atmosphere protecting you. Even the molecules of smoke didn't. How many of you know when even a little bit of smoke gets in you, it can last, right? Amen. So, verse 28, Nebuchadnezzar said, praise the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel. Again, the picture of God coming into the furnace was a bit much for him. So it's like it's an angel. It's it's a messenger. It's a son of God. It's something, some kind of being that's sort of God. who sent his angel to rescue his servants. They trusted in him and defied the king's command and were willing to give up their lives rather than serve or worship any god except their own God. Therefore, I decree that the people of any nation or language who say anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be cut into pieces, their horses be turned into piles of rubble, and for no other God can save in this way. How's Nebuchadnezzar doing with his relationship with God here? He's kind of little respect, no? He's like, you guys talk about the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. You're going to be cut to pieces. Your horse is going to be cut to pieces. Too bad. Your God's not going to save you because your God's not bigger than my God, and my God's not bigger than their God, and their God's bigger than my God, so you might as well not talk against that God. I'm not gonna. And what's interesting is how God blesses Nebuchadnezzar in his life and uses him, even though he's a pagan king, but he has some respect for God. And I'm going to look at his son in a minute and see a little different attitude. But the position, and remember too, when the leaders want to come against Daniel later, and they try to figure out some way to get him out of power because they don't like him again because he's doing such a good job. Makes no sense to me at all. Someone's doing a great job leading, so you don't want him to lead. You want to take his place because you think you can do a better job? No, because he's making me look bad. So you're not really worried about the country. You're not really worried about how things are going. You just think you should be in power. Yeah, that's evil. That's demonic. That's of the devil. To try to remove somebody in a position that's above you, that's doing a good job and doing what should be done, just because you want that position. That's just wrong. Now, if they're doing a horrible job and you can do better, then yeah, good, do it. Go run for student body president. Can't remember the name. But these people, when they go against Daniel later, then remember, they don't go against his God, but they go against his relationship with God. They're not going to cross Nebuchadnezzar on this one. They don't talk about his God, but they'll talk about how they function in their relationship. So it's like, okay, we'll make this decree. They pray to you, and then Daniel won't pray. He prays to his God. And so they're not going against his God. They're going against their practice with God, what they're doing in their relationship with God. So zipping along here, because there's so much here. Nebuchadnezzar has a dream, and it's a dream about a tree. And he finally has Daniel come in and share the vision and what the dream means. And it's a tough dream because it's Nebuchadnezzar having to learn humility. The interpretation is given in chapter 4, verse 19, kind of toward the middle of verse 19, I guess. It says, "My Lord, if only the dream applied to your enemies